let's go ahead and get things started then. What's going on, party people? My name is Kyle Springer, and you are listening to episode 6 of the Review Show. This is going to be a pretty awesome one. I am joined, as always, by Melissa Wilkinson. How are you?
Hello. I'm great. It is a sunny, Sunday morning as we record this. This is a great brunch podcast.
Good. It's not as sunny where I am, but I mean it looks like it on the camera at least because I have a window right in front of me, so I'm pasty McPale over here. But
you do look luminous.
Yeah, bright lights and everything. Yeah, so we're streaming, we're live on Twitch. If you are joining us on Twitch, thank you. Come hang out with us in the chat. You guys can follow us on Twitch and be notified anytime we go live. Our Twitch page could use some love, so come hang out with us. But if not, that is a-okay, because we will be putting this up on YouTube and as a podcast the following week. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one. I'm
yes,
trying to slow down and take deep breaths. We're talking about Kids on the Slope this week, and it is an anime that is near and dear to my heart. It is one of my favorites, and I'm trying to think how I even found out about this one. I think it was a guy that I knew that mentioned it to me and recommended it while we were working this event. And we were just on staff there, so we were just kind of hanging out while everyone was off having fun, and we're sitting there talking about comics and anime and stuff like that. And I guess after mentioning that I had seen Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, he was like, "Oh, have you heard of Kids on the Slope?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" He goes, "It's another one by the same director. Shinichiro Watanabe is his name. And he made this one, and it's a lot shorter. It's not very well known, but it's really good." And you wouldn't expect it to be good because it's so different from the rest of his stuff. It's a slice of life kind of romance, but more of a bromance kind of thing going on.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, that's not really my style. I don't know, I like that director, but I don't know. And then I finally checked it out, and I was in tears. I was like, this is so good! I love it! Yes! Yeah, so what did you think of Kids on the Slope?
I liked it. I was very charmed by it, and it went in a lot of places I didn't expect it to go. I spent a lot of it trying to gauge what the tone was going to be, if it was going to be more of just sort of a simple, pleasant slice of life, or if it was going to go more into the drama, and it did keep going more into the drama, but never so much that it got, very gloomy.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely some, sad teen angsty parts and stuff like that.
Yeah, plenty of those.
It's never, really doom and gloom except for one character, but he also gets a good ending. But it surprised the hell out of me. Because I was expecting a little bit more action, of course, but that's just me because that's what I like out of shows. I had my fingers crossed for them doing more shows and barroom fights and stuff like that, because it's in this post-war late post-war period where tensions are still kind of high. Japan is rebuilding and stuff like that, and so I was just expecting a little bit more tension from that scene. But my friend was like, no, it's a romance. I was like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think this is one of the things that I've noticed as I've gotten older. I've gotten more and more kind of open to the idea that, hey, there's other things out there that I might really, really like, even though it might seem like I won't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of what this podcast is all about, right? Just to, like, explore all of the stuff that's out there. Like, hey, I'm not a huge fan of romance stuff. Maybe there's some stuff out there that I might really like, you know? Because that's not to say that there's not good stories in romance, you know, in the romance genre, right?
Yeah, and not to pigeonhole myself as the girl on this podcast, but if you want romances, I can find you some.
we can definitely do some more romances on this show. One thing I've always wanted to do on this show that we haven't yet was like a K-drama, like a Korean drama, because I always hear about them, but I have no idea what they are, or, you know, stuff like that. So
yeah,
we'll see.
That sounds really fun.
We'll see. Yeah. Side note, I actually have been watching a Korean drama show. It's more of a crime show, and it's really good.
Okay.
It's a Netflix original show called Bad Guys Vile City, and it's fantastic.
Okay.
But yeah, I digress. Kids on the Slope, though. So if you've never watched this anime, let me give you a little bit of a rundown of what this is, so you guys know. Like I said, it kind of takes place in super late post-war period, kind of more Cold War-ish, because there's a scene in there where you see the calendar, and it's 68.
I think the series spans like 66 to 68. It goes through a decent amount of time, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and we'll get into that, because I have some good things to say about the like length of time that it spanned. But it takes place kind of in this late post-war period, and it's about this kid who's kind of a military brat, from what I understood, where his father is kind of moving from town to town and stuff like that, and so he has to change schools basically every year. So he's kind of a loner, doesn't really have very many friends, but he also plays classical piano, and that's like his passion. Sorry if you guys can hear the dogs running around in the background. They are overly excited today. I think they know that their mom is coming back. My roommate has been out of town this weekend. But yeah, so this kid, he plays classical piano, and that's his passion, and he moves to this new town, and it's kind of the same old rigmarole where he's kind of stressed out about moving, meeting new people, and he thinks it's the worst. Like, the most doom and gloom this show has is the opening scene where he's just like, I hate this.
Oh, yes.
This is the worst.
He starts off so angsty.
Yeah. He's like, is this all that life is? Walking up this slope every day with these stupid kids and the but yeah, so he's going to a brand new high school, and the very, very first day he has this panic attack, and he kind of runs to the roof of his school, because that's what he in the past has kind of done. He runs up to the roof, kind of goes out there where hopefully no one else is, and he at least gets some fresh air, where he can just kind of calm down and take a breath. Except when he gets up to the roof, there's these chairs kind of lined up, and there's something covered in this like white sheet, and he's just like, what in the world is this? And so he kind of lifts the sheet off, and it's a dude. It's a guy just laying on the chairs, and they have the like most like not even subtle but like gay subtext there ever was. Yes, they do that a couple times through the series. It's really funny, actually. And it's this like really like almost homoerotic scene in like slow motion. They're grabbing wrists, they almost kiss. It's like it's an angel. You know, and it's just like okay. And I remember watching that because me being like, I don't really like romance, and I'm like, yeah, what did I start watching?
Yeah, it took me a long time into the series to figure out if they were supposed to be like actual romantic love interests or not, or just very strong platonic love interests to each other. That's kept kind of vague the whole time.
It ends up being kind of very strong platonic friends.
Yeah,
but
which I did like.
Which there needs to be more kind of relationships like that on TV and stuff, because there's not enough of them, or if there are, it's just very like, hey bro, what are you doing, bro? So yeah, but yeah, so he meets this guy that's kind of out by the roof, and he's kind of the school bully, like the school bad boy. I think they describe him as like this bad boy that even the teachers don't know how to manage. He just kind of does what he wants, and that's him.
I wrote him down. Yeah, I wrote him down in my notes as chaotic good drum ruffian.
Yeah. He's like overly dramatic for someone who's this like kind of macho, like the macho character of the show, or one of them. But yeah, he's just kind of this chaotic good where he does whatever he wants, but he's like in the end like really good natured, you know,
yeah.
And he just wants to care about the people that he loves. And so his name is Centauro. The main character's name, they give him a nickname of Richie, after Richie Rich, because they know he's a very wealthy student. And they kind of get into a fight kind of right away. Well, not them two. They're not fighting, but Centauro goes and fights some of the seniors on the roof. And it's just kind of this rough and tumble, you know, like let's go beat them up.
Yeah.
And so they eventually kind of get into some trouble, and they're in the nurse's office, and Centauro is kind of drumming with his fingers on the desk, just, you know, and the Richie is like, is that jazz? And Centauro's like, you know what that is? Did we just have a moment? Like,
this is from back when jazz was new.
Yeah, like jazz was super pop. Well, it was super popular in the United States, but for where they are, like this is stuff that they had to get imported. And considering kind of their relations with the U.S., you know, it wasn't the best at that time. And so, yeah, I'm sure it was this kind of like it was kind of that like dreamy period of jazz where if you liked it, you were cool, like you were one of the indie people. He was like, you know what it is? He's like, well, I play classical, but I at least know it, you know. And so like they instantly become friends, even if they're a bit reluctant at first. But Richie, who knows how to play classical, is very stiff. Like, very much, I must play the song by the books, by the notes, how it needs to be. There is no soul, you know? And so most of the story kind of revolves around them teaching Richie to play jazz and just kind of like, hey, like, loosen up. Just feel it. Just feel the music. And then kind of paralleling that sentiment with what's happening in their in their lives. Just like, hey, like, life isn't something that you can necessarily play by the books. It's not that like you can't expect it to go one certain way the entire time. Like you're gonna go in all sorts of different directions. You're gonna be fast. You're gonna be slow. It's gonna be something you don't expect, and that's kind of what jazz music is all about, right? Just like we can do anything. We can go anywhere, and this show ends up being a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what this show is. I think we're about to dive into it a little bit more and get into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. Go watch it. It's on Hulu. I'm sure you guys can find it other places as well. But if you have Hulu, it is on there. You can watch. I think it's only 12 or 13 episodes. So it's super short.
I think it's 12.
You can watch it in a weekend or a couple nights, but it's really fantastic, and the soundtrack is great. So go check it out, and then come back here, and you can finish the rest of this with us. But if you're sticking out with us on Twitch, enjoy. Let us know what you thought, because right now I opted us into Twitch's new low latency streams, which means like fan interactions or like the chat interactions are almost instant. So as I say, like, hey, Eric Mannix is really cool, and if he was in the chat right now, he could be like, why, yes, I am, instantly, and it would be amazing. Yeah, so come let us know what you thought. If you don't make it for this one, come next week. Come hang out with us. Because we would love to have your guys' thoughts and opinions on this show as well. Melissa.
Yes.
Now that we're kind of getting into spoiler territory, like, well, first let me ask you this: what were you expecting when I pitched this show? What in your mind, what were you expecting this show to be?
I think I was expecting the two leads to be more reticent to befriend each other. I thought we were going to spend more time with them as, like, rivals and more time in the school as just classmates who had opposing attitudes about things, and, like, maybe they'd be in a music class at school and that's where they would clash, and they wouldn't be, like, friends until episode 7 or something. And
it kind of, like, ends up being that battle that Sentaro and Juni had, where they're just like, they're going at it, like, well, you take this, you take that, you take this. Okay.
And I was expecting it to be a little bit more, like, lighthearted. Not to say that it isn't, but this isn't a comedy show. Like, I don't know if I actually, like, laughed out loud very much, but it is, like, very pleasant the whole time. Like, it's just smooth and easy and charming.
Yeah, it's a very charming show. So you mentioned that you did enjoy this. What did you think now that you've seen the whole thing? What are your thoughts?
It definitely went some places I wasn't expecting it to go. Like, the way the show ends, where, like, all three of them haven't seen each other in 8 years, like, completely took me by surprise.
Yeah.
That seemed like such a big, dramatic thing to pin at the end of this show.
It's like the super dramatic, super happy, and extra joyful, like, crescendo of the whole show. I mean, because, like, besides that last scene, it all kind of falls apart, like, at the end there, which is super sad. And then it's just like, well, I guess life moves on, and that's it. And then they have that reunion there.
It was a lot more disastrous than I thought it would be. Or I guess not disastrous, but, like, yeah, you're right. Things really do just fall apart for the main cast, like, right there at the end.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is sort of... It is kind of frustrating watching this, because, like, you kids can just talk to each other and you would solve a lot of your problems.
They're
like,
in
a
high
lot
school.
Of the drama.
They're like 15 years old, so they don't know what communication is.
A lot of the drama in the show is just like, oh, I want to tell you, but for a lot of dumb personal reasons, I can't. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, just talk to them.
The angst. There's so much angst
Yes.
in this show. High school angst.
But there were, like, nice breaks from that. Like, I loved, I thought it was neat that, let me find their names in my notes. It was Brother June and then the rich girl, Yukira. Yeah, I liked that Brother June and Yukira had that little side story that wrapped itself up, like, pretty soon and, like, fairly simply compared to the other kids' storylines.
Yeah.
Like, okay, these people actually, it took them a while, but they did open their hearts to each other and actually say what it was they wanted to say. Like, she comes to him and she's like, I have 4 questions. You're going to answer all 4 of my questions.
Yeah. She's kind of one of the more mature ones of the bunch. But that whole scene, that whole storyline is really, really cool and evil at the same time, because it sets you up for an expectation of, this is how I want their, like, the end of their story to go. And at the end, when Richie gets on the train and then Rico Chan shows up, you want the same thing to happen. You're like, I know this can happen. I've seen it work before. Just grab her and pull her on the train.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen, and she's running after it, and you're just like, no!
We also had that scene with Richie, or Kaoru is his real name, with him and his mom, which was something that actually was not as dramatic and angsty as I thought it would be. Like, he actually is a very warm, pleasant reunion with his mom. And they've got this really sweet moment, like, just as she is seeing him off on the train, where, like, she says, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For leaving him as he's departing off the train, and he says, like, I forgive you, or it's okay. And he's like, I don't know if she ever saw me mouth that to her as we rushed away on the train, but I like to think that she knew it. Like, I think we are settled with each other. So we've got, like, that relationship, and we've got, you know, June and Yukira, and you're expecting, like, the third goodbye on the train to go that to not be a goodbye, to have more connection, to have some actual communication to it. But no, it's just them, like, waving at each other as they are yards away from each other.
And she's still happy for him, but it's still just like, no. Like, the Adele moment, we could have had it all. Yes! But yeah, like, that scene really sets you up for some heartbreak down the road. Let me ask you this: Did you cry at all watching this, or tear up?
I did get a little teared up at the end, but especially, like, I am more affected by, like, very sweet, heartwarming, victorious things than at, like, sad things. The most emotional part for me was that festival performance.
Okay, yeah.
That was just beautiful, and, like, the students are all rushing in from, like, all over the campus, like, oh, do you hear what they're doing in the auditorium? Like, everybody, this is amazing. Like, everybody come listen to this. That, and, like, they just grab each other and, like, run off at the end. Yeah. That was fantastic. That's awesome. The highlight of the whole series for me, I think.
That melody that they do is amazing. It's so good. And yeah, like, that was, I think, I mean, I've watched this show multiple times, but the ending is, like, always gets me. Just that, like, happy reunion. I cry every single time at that. But I think this was the first time, that their festival, like, performance actually made me cry. Just because it was, I love this so much. I love this song. I'm so happy. They're having fun. It is great. Yeah. You know, like, and they have that moment where Richie is kind of behind the curtain, and he hears Sentaro talking, as they're, because they're doing the festival and the power kind of goes out, or they're like the fuse for their amps go out, so the band that's on there can't really play. and Richie, who's kind of on staff, has to go see if he can fix it. So he's behind stage, and they're literally separated by a curtain, and they don't know that, you know, they're on opposite sides. And Centauro is sitting there like, nah, I think this will be, you know, my last thing, because I'm waiting on my real partner, you know. And it's and he's just like, I'm gonna go play. Like, I'm gonna go hop on the piano right now. Like, I'm not gonna keep him waiting, you know. And that's what he does. He just hops on the piano, and they're like, oh shit, oh okay, yeah, let's go, you know.
Yeah,
and it's so good. It's
like,
so
we
happy.
Don't need, yeah, like, we don't need electric guitars like the previous band that was playing here. Like, we can do this just the two of us, impromptu, by ourselves, no electricity, let's go. And it's like, I imagine for every student at that school, that's something they remember years later. Like, oh, do you remember that really great jazz performance that popped up at the festival?
Yeah. Which, in fact, one of the characters mentions that at their graduations.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but he was the nerd guy that used to.
Yeah, that is Maruo, I think.
Maruo or Mauru or something like that.
Yeah, Mauru.
By the way, watching it again this time, he is by far one of my favorite side characters. They did some amazing things with him that I didn't even realize or catch in this. That he is like, he's the nerd at like the first episode that no one likes. But then when the art student kid is auditioning for the band, he's the one that is shredding on the electric guitar.
Yes!
And he's so good, and the ladies love him for it. And he's just, he's so happy. He's just like, yes, people like me. It's so great.
I loved his transformation. I love how he just very quietly in the background gets more confident as the show goes on into where it's like graduation, and he's super happy, and there's like a girl who asks him for like one of the buttons off his jacket, which I guess is the equivalent to like, give me your ring, your class ring or something like that.
Something like that,
and so he's very successful.
He's getting it.
I did really like the balance of these very angsty, tumultuous main characters with very stable side characters. Like, somebody I really loved was Matsuoka Seiji, who is the art student that puts together that band. And when you first meet him, well, first of all, he's so flamboyant and so theatrical. Yeah, and I was trying to like figure out, he almost feels like he's from a different show entirely.
Yeah.
And I spent a while trying to figure him out, if all that flamboyantness was like, oh, is this is set in like 1967, is this the first actual gay person any of these people are meeting? And then as you learn more about him and how he wants to be like a rock pop star, it's like, oh no, that's just stage man theatricality.
This is all an act. It's all this like, I want to be something that the girls can like scream about, and you know, because like he gives Centauro the Beatles record, like, and that's what he's all about, you know. It's kind of this more like hippie, like, let's just love everyone, you know, let's be happy and put on a show. And we see him down the road when Richie's a doctor and he's on this show and he's doing a live performance. But it's not on screen. But when the camera cuts back to Richie, you still hear the audio of the TV in the background. And he mentions, and I also really like jazz.
Yes.
And I was just like,
so sweet.
Yes, I know why he likes jazz.
So Seiji, it took me like a little while to figure out how to read him and like exactly how he was fitting into the story, but I did really like him, and I love how he just comes out perfectly straightforward and says what he is about. Like, I come from a family where I don't have a lot of money and I have all of these siblings, and I'm really hoping to like make it big so I can have something that will provide for my family. Like, he just spells out everything he is about, and it was such a breath of fresh air with all of these characters like not displaying their true feelings. This kid is just like, yes, this is who I am and this is what I want to do.
And yeah, and that's why Sentaro is like, hey, I'll join you, because he, like, one, he can kind of relate, but then he respected that. He was like, hey, I know what I want. Here's my goal. Like, that's what I'm going after. So, lots of good stuff. Lots of, like, great small details in this show.
Yeah, like, we didn't spend a lot of time at the school compared to how much I was expecting we would when I started the show, but I did love everything at the school. Like, they've got tiny little appearances, and some of them don't even have, like, names, but all of the classmates they have were always entertaining. Like, the one girl that goes up to Ritsuko and is like, I'm gonna knit something for a boy I like.
Yeah.
Do you want to knit a boy project with me?
Yeah.
And it was just so quaint and sweet.
So
like,
wholesome.
oh, I love this boy. I'm going to make him a sweater.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff like that. There's, like, even, what was the girl's name that Brother June gets with? What was her name again?
Yukira.
Yukira. Her cat, she names it Chet.
Yes!
Which, I think the first time I watched it, I never caught it. I caught it before, but then it was, I hadn't watched the show in a while, so it was something I saw. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's a good little small note, and that's the first, like, that's the name of the jazz artist of the first jazz record that she saw. And she listened to. Chet Baker Sings. When she first comes to the shop, she's looking at this record, Chet Baker Sings, which is actually a fantastic record. By the way, he's an actual trumpet player, and he sings sometimes. But yeah, just like to see that when her cat, like, hops out of her lap, and she's like, Chet, come back, you know? It's like, oh, she named it after you know, this jazz artist that she likes, and all because of Brother June, you know.
Yeah.
So there's lots of little good stuff like that throughout the show, and I think that's one of the things that this show does really well. Like, I want to get on to some of the animation and the directing, but the with the amount of time that they had in 13 episodes, the amount of stuff that they just packed into this show was incredible. And not once did I feel like it was too much, or that it was like if you've seen, like, Spider-Man 2 with Andrew Garfield, that was just overly bloated with stuff. And it was just like, you know, there probably could have been a good storyline in here, but there's 50 other storylines. So, you know, I don't really know which one to pay attention to or care about. And I think there can be a lot of, like, movies or TV shows that end up doing that, where there's just too much stuff and they dilute, like, the point of their story, or what their story is actually about, or what their characters' motivations are, with all this extra stuff. And I think this show does a really good job of kind of spelling it out, even if it is that teen angst. Like, it's weird, because you like you mentioned, you have the characters, like, this is who I am, this is what I want, here's my goal, I have four questions, like, you need to answer them right now, you know. There's characters like that, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the main characters that are super angsty, but by doing that, you know what their motivations are. You know what they're thinking.
Yes.
Like, you actually really like this person. You know, this is why you're doing this. Like, you don't need to sit here and think, like, why am I doing this? Like, I can tell you why you're doing this.
Yes.
You know? And I think it does that really well, where you get the characters' motivations. You get what they're thinking. You know what the show is about easily. And because of that, you don't need to spend all of this time on kind of extra side stories and stuff like that. I mean, there are side stories, but again, you don't spend much time on them. It's just like, here's what happened, here's what's happening now, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's it. And I really liked that. Like, I honestly could have seen like 2 more seasons of this and just been perfectly happy with like the amount of stuff, because like I ended up caring about what happened in these people's lives. I mean, is that something you noticed with the show?
Yeah, I think they did a good job of not putting too much time on things you didn't need. Like, we can see, like, Ritsuko doesn't have a mother in the picture. We don't know if she died or anything like that, right. But we don't spend time dwelling on it because that's not really important to our emotional story right now, which is just dealing with these boys that she likes and dealing with a lack of confidence in herself. Mm-hmm. So they don't spend time on things that they could but really aren't needed, but they do throw in stuff that, like, I am so happy this was here. Like, they could have done the story without it, and I don't know if I would have missed it, but, like, to have it here is fantastic. Like, I love Kaoru's relationship with Sentaro's little sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he sort of, like, he sees her playing by herself one day, and he's like, oh, I don't want you to be alone, I'll play with you. And another one of my favorite scenes in the whole thing is when they're playing that with the tin can phone.
Yep.
And he's pretending to be, like, a child therapy office, and she's telling him about this boy who teases her in class.
It's kind of his, like, it's the moments that he has where he can actually be an adult. And he doesn't have to be the teen, because he sees someone younger than him, and he's now in the aspect of, like, hey, I've been there. I know what it's like. You know, here's what you're thinking, you know. But it's just a reflection of his own stuff, right? Where he's just like, there's this girl that I like, but I don't really know what to do. It's kind of difficult, you know? And he's sitting there like, well, maybe you should just tell this guy how you feel, you know? It's like, you idiot, you do that! Like,
yes! Take your own advice! Yeah, I think that was a really emotional scene for me, and I think the show was good at recognizing we don't need this thing, so we're not going to put it in. Mm-hmm. And also, we don't need this thing, but this is just going to be this extra, like, perfect topping on top of what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they counter that really well with the way Watanabe directs this show. Mm-hmm. 'Cause that was something I tried to pay attention to more in this show. And we get a lot, especially now that we've mentioned that the show is really short and there's so much packed in there.
Yeah.
Like, you might expect there to not really be any room to breathe, and just like it's all like nonstop, just boom, 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 this beat, that beat, you know. And that's really not the case. And I think that's because, or partly because of the way this show was directed. There's a lot of moments while the characters are talking, or while they're kind of monologuing, or even while something more dramatic and upbeat is happening, that the camera will cut to something else, just something in nature, or something. You know, it might have some kind of emotional, poetic kind of, you know, connection, maybe. But you know, they'll be talking, and then all of a sudden you'll get this scene of like a leaf falling, and that's it. And it's like, you didn't need to show us that leaf, or it doesn't really have much impact on the show itself, but it kind of takes you away from everything. And gives you a moment to breathe. And it's just like, okay, while they're still saying that, I can kind of sit here, watch this leaf fall, and process it. And I think that's a really nice touch, and it's funny enough, because I've heard people say, like, who aren't fans of anime that like they're like, yeah, the animation is great and all, but they'll spend like 2 minutes on a scene where like a leaf is floating in a river and it has nothing to do with the show.
It's nice.
And it's like, why did you even need to put that in there? And I can understand that, you know, when they linger too long. But again, like, we'll get that, but we don't linger. It's like like there's so much in this show that we'll get that scene, we'll get that beat, and then cut right back to whatever is happening. And I think it makes for like a really nice pace, or like change of pace, but then right back to what we were doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the show is paced very well. I never felt like there was anything both like larger in terms of a storyline or smaller in terms of like a shot of something that went on longer than needed or went by too fast.
Yeah, so that did really well, which now I kind of want to go watch Watanabe's other stuff and see, because like I've watched his stuff knowing that I like the shows, but never really analyzing them to be like, okay, what is he actually doing to like make the story more impactful or make these characters stand out. And that was something I was kind of looking for in this thing. And it's funny because another thing I noticed is that they don't really change the way the camera like looks at a character when they're thinking inside their heads.
Yeah.
Like sometimes shows might do that just to like let you know, like, hey, he's not actually saying this, he's thinking it, right? But this, they don't really differentiate that. So they're kind of wearing their thoughts and their emotions on their sleeve. It's just the exact same of them talking, and which is why I think like it's so easy for us to be like, no, you like her, go talk to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not like, well, does he really like her? I don't know. He did this one thing over here that one day, but I don't know. It's just like, no, like this is basically you speaking. You like her, you know, go, or you like him, go make him those mittens, you know? So it's, I don't know. That was something that I picked up on. Did you notice anything about the art that you wanted to talk on or talk about?
Yeah. The show looks very good, and in particular, the scenes where they are playing music, like watching Sentaro play the drums, is beautiful. Like, those drums
mind-blowing.
Are animated so lovingly, like the way they move, the way the cymbals just glisten, the way on some shots, the shots where it's like the entire quartet playing, the camera almost like vibrates, like there's so much sound and so much energy in that room that the camera itself also can't stay still. And the movements were so fluid. Like, I think sometimes on Sentaro, it might have even been like a really high quality rotoscope of an actual drummer. Did you kind of get that vibe?
I'm assuming that was their process. I don't actually know. But the person who produced the music, Yoko Kanno, she does a lot of the music for Watanabe's animes, and she produces a lot of it with her own band called the Seatbelts. They were the ones that made the Cowboy Bebop theme song, the and they did all of the well, I'm not sure if the Seatbelts did, but she did all of the music for this. Like, she recorded it with other people, and I think she was the one playing piano. I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, I'm assuming they hired like musicians to play these songs, and they filmed them and then like made the animation based off of that. because it looked really real, and
Yes.
It was not only yeah, because like it's not just that it looks real, but you could see the drum fills were matching what he did,
Yes.
you know, and so that's like, oh, like they really, like, this is not just them, like, oh, it's you know, they just happen to be playing music. No, this is the character's heart and soul is here. This is the time that they really spent the time and money and dedication to make sure this animation is right. I saw a comment somewhere, I think it was on YouTube, as I went to go look for the melody that they did at the festival.
Yeah.
And in one of the comments, someone was like, overall, I didn't like the writing in this show, but most of what the characters actually say is in the music that they play. And like that,
Yes.
like that's how they speak, and that's where there's not this teen angst. Oh, do I or don't I? I don't know. I'm helpless. But when they're playing the songs, they know exactly what to think and know exactly what to feel, and that's like their true selves. And he was like, I loved that. And yeah, so like I think you kind of had to spend that time on like, hey, this is what the characters are actually about. We need to make sure this is perfect. There was another scene in there that I noticed that they did that same style with. Did you pick up on what it was?
Outside of all the music performances?
Yes.
Oh. I don't know. Which one are you thinking about?
It was during the festival. The montage of all the students being like, oh shit, like, come listen.
Oh, yes! Yes! Yeah, I did notice that animation was, like, extra fluid and human, I guess.
Yeah, very much so. And so it's kind of fascinating to see. It's not just about how how they felt making the songs and stuff, but its effect on other people, too.
Yes.
And that was just like, this is really cool. Like, this is like, I that's exactly what I would be doing. Like, you have to listen to this. This is fantastic, you know? So yeah, like, did you happen to listen to our episode on, what's it called? It's an anime, Shirobako.
No, I haven't listened to that one. I haven't listened to a lot of the back catalog of things I'm not already familiar with.
That's A-okay. It's another anime that Paul was the one that pitched it. I picked it because it's an anime about making anime.
Oh.
And it just skyrocketed instantly to one of my favorites. Because
Nice.
it's about this like fictional anime studio, and there's a couple characters that are like new and stuff like that. There's actually a group of girls who were in their high school's like anime club, and as they're like going away senior project in that club, they made their own episode of an anime. And then they all go to college, so they go their separate ways, and they all each go into the anime industry with the goal that one day they all want to work on it in anime together. So it's neat. It's a good story, but you really get this inside look on how it's all made. Of when I need to animate a cat, like, I actually need to go spend time with cats and like figure out how they move and stuff like that. And there's a part in there where they're doing this one anime, and there's a stampede of horses, and they're like, yeah, we don't really have anyone that can do that, or that we know of. And so they kind of go to some freelancers for some help, and a lot of the characters in that show are based off of real people. And so they go to this one character who is the animator in real life, who did Neon Genesis Evangelion, which in that show it's called something else. You know, it's a knockoff, but you know that's what it is. And he's like, wait, why are you coming to me with this when in your studio you have a veteran like that? This is his specialty, and you just didn't know it. Like, you've been having him do all this stupid stuff, like, you know, but this is his specialty. And there was this one scene, and he's, like, acting it out, and he did this, and then when they move like this, and it's fantastic. And, like, I can't help but think of that, just, like, what they went to get those musicians just right, to film them at all the right angles, to, okay, it makes sense to, you know, do all of that. And it looks so good, and it turned out so well. And I'm just like, man, they put their heart and soul into making this. It's so good. So I'm
yeah, I could definitely feel all of the love in this show. Like, they didn't pick jazz just because it was cool. Like, they picked it because it really meant something to them, and they wanted to explore how it meant something to all these characters and to the Japanese culture at that time.
Yeah.
And the whole show just felt like a tribute.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because when Watanabe directs, most of the shows that he's done are very heavily like music influenced. Cowboy Bebop is obviously like jazz and funk. Space Dandy is more disco. Samurai Champloo is hip hop, and this is classical and jazz. And the difference is that this one, the story is actually about the music. The other ones, like, the story doesn't really center around that. It's just the soundtrack in the background, and kind of how some of the show is made. Where, like, you know, Space Dandy, the music is disco, and so the show is this kind of really loud, flamboyant, bright lights and colors, you know, and stuff like that, where Cowboy Bebop is jazz and funk, so it has this cooler edge to it, but it's not necessarily slow paced, but it has these like fight scenes where things pick up, right? And it, you know, it's like, oh, they're getting into some action, you know. But it's never really about the music. And this one I think stands out compared to the rest of them because of that. Like the songs, the soundtrack, all of that stands out to me because, like, they had to put so much more love into the entirety of the show, because, like, not that they had to put that much more into the entirety of the show, but, like, the songs feature that much more, like, as a much more central theme, if that makes sense. So yeah. What did you think of the music? Did you have a favorite song, or?
I really liked everything they did with My Favorite Things. Especially, it goes through so many different iterations. Yeah. None of which are the original, like, Julie Andrews version that we know and love and that started this whole thing. And then I especially loved when, after they've been practicing, like, all week and they're just lying on the floor exhausted, and they just go around and say what their favorite things are. That was really sweet.
Good scene. Yeah, that one they took some extra care on, which is also neat because, like, I think a lot of people think of, like, the original Julie Andrews version, and that's not really jazzy at all.
No.
And, like, that's kind of one of the cool things about jazz, too. Like, everyone did everyone else's songs. Like, everyone had their own rendition of, you know, X, Y, and Z. Like, I have playlists that have 3 versions of My Funny Valentine on there and stuff, and like that, to see them take a song, then that, yeah, there are jazz interpretations of that song, but then to see them take all of them and just kind of make their own thing, it's like, that's really cool. So that stood out to me for sure. I think for me, my favorite song was obviously the melody that they did.
Yeah.
But what was even cooler to me was that each of the episode names was a name of a favorite,
yes,
or of a famous jazz song, and that that those names kind of had something to do with what was happening in the show. Like, I think the scene when they do the live performance at the jazz bar, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that episode is called But Not For Me, which there's a song, like, they're writing songs of love, but not for me, which I believe is the one that he ends up singing in there, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. But yeah, so it's... What's happening in that episode is when we first kind of start to see that, so Richie likes Richan. Richan likes Sentaro. Sentaro likes what's her name, and what's her name likes brother June. I cannot remember her name at all. And they each kind of like someone else, but it's so they each have this, like, hey, they all know, like, you idiot, if you just turned around,
Yes!
Like, so that, like, their love is in the air. They're writing songs of love, but not for me, because the person that I likes someone else,
Yeah.
And they all feel that, and I'm like, that's so good. They've made that so well.
Yeah, the whole series is just this chain of romantic drama dominoes.
Yeah. And then when one thing goes bad for someone, it goes bad for everyone else. So, yeah. Good show.
I also want to say that I like that it wasn't 100% romantic drama. Like, I really appreciated all the stuff with, like, Sentaro's family.
Yeah.
To where, like, his mother ran off and his dad ran off, and I guess he's with, like, his stepmom and all of his half-siblings. And, like, he's so scared when his dad finally comes back. Like, oh, I am one of the things that pushed my dad away in the first place.
Yeah. Well, his dad, I think, was a U.S. soldier, if I'm not mistaken.
His birth dad and his, like, his mother's husband, I guess, is who I'm talking about when I say his dad.
Yeah. So like, his birth dad was a U.S. soldier. His mom was kind of shunned by the family not really shunned, but to a point where she just ran off, and so she just kind of abandoned him to this, like, adopted step family. And so he's like, he has this whole kind of inferiority complex, kind of like he needs to project, which is perfect that he kind of plays the drums, because stereotypically that's like the loud one where you can just get all of your anger out, but yeah, there's some good stuff, some good backstories.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting juxtaposition that all of the family relationships, though they seem daunting at first, end up being pretty stable. Like, when Sentaro's dad, I guess, the dad who raised him, comes back, he's not as angry as Sentaro expects. And, like, when Kaoru sees his mom again for the first time in years, like, that's a fairly pleasant reunion. Like, they're both really glad to see each other. And, like, even when Kaoru, when his dad comes back after being away at work for so long,
Yeah.
like, his dad's actually, like, not as scary as we've been led to believe. Like, you know, he's very, like, I would like you to have good grades, son. But also he's like, hey, I found out where your mother is. Here's her address. You're welcome to go visit her on your next break. Like, just, here's this letter. Just stop and think about it for a little while. Like, he's fairly gentle in that regard. And to have all these tumultuous, like, peer relationships, I think it was a nice balance that all of the familial relationships turned out fairly well, even if they were intimidating at first.
Yeah, it's rough. Life is rough. Life is hard. Yeah. But any final thoughts on this show?
It took me until, like, episode 9 to figure out that the steps down into the basement practice room were also kind of a slope.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like, I knew we had the literal slope, which is the very steep hill that goes up to their school, and then the metaphorical slope of just like, oh, I'm going down in my personal relationships, or oh, I'm going up in my maturity as I grow up and learn new skills and I graduate high school. And I'm like, oh, there's a third slope here that I wasn't even thinking about, and it's these stairs, these, like, literal stairs they climb up and down to get to the practice room, and then also, like, oh, I've got to climb ahead of me to do this thing that I need to do.
Life is a slippery slope.
Yeah, this is really a show with a lot of layers to it, and it's definitely something I could see myself revisiting a couple years from now and finding whole new things about it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think this is my, like, third or fourth time watching it. And yeah, there's a couple shows that I'll go back to every, like, year and a half, 2 years, and just be like, man, I really love this show, but it's been a while, and this is one of them, and it's still good each time. It's just like, this is so good, you know. But yeah, so go check it out, especially if you think this is not for you. Because this was not on my radar at all. Would not be. This is not a genre that I usually pay attention to. But this kind of, you know, opened my eyes to, hey, there's actually good stories out there in genres you may or may not like. You just kind of have to put in the research so you don't, you know, end up with some kind of cheesy Fabio novel, you know. But
yeah, you're not looking for that kind of romance.
Yeah, like, if you actually want a good story, they are out there. And stuff like that, so.
I'd never heard of the show until you pitched it to me last week. I'm really glad I watched it, and I think this is a great all ages show. Like, show this to a teen. And also, I was watching it like, oh, this is an anime I could show to my, like, 60-something-year-old parents.
Yeah.
And they'd really enjoy.
I've made my mom watch this, and she still doesn't really understand that animation nowadays can be more than, like, cat and mouse, like, more than actually Tom and Jerry. Like, there's actually plot lines and stuff. I mean, she understands it because she likes Disney and stuff like that, but it's still, like, I don't know, there's, like, I guess something about that generation that it's just, like, she, like, it doesn't really click with her. But she you know, she sat there and she watched it with me, and she's like, this is good. I like the music. It's like, okay, Mom, thanks. As I'm, like, sitting there in tears, like, Mom, it's so beautiful. Let me ask you this, though, before we wrap things up and move on to pitching what we will do for next week. Now that you've seen this, what else would you recommend to people? Like, if they watched this and liked it, what might you recommend?
Oh, man, I don't know. I couldn't come up with a whole lot of corollaries. No, actually, I do kind of have something.
Okay.
This is a movie I really love. It's called A Mighty Wind. It's an American comedy movie from, like, the early mid-2000s. It's directed by Christopher Guest, who's the guy who did Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show, and he's one of the people that created Spinal Tap.
Okay.
So it is this improv comedy mockumentary. So stylistically completely different from this show.
Sure.
But it's about this well-known folk music producer who has died. And so all the folk groups he ever produced with are coming together to create one last tribute concert to this man. And in particular, there's a pair of singers. It was this old couple named Mitch and Mickey. Mickey's a lady. Mm-hmm. And they were together, like they were a couple doing these beautiful love songs. And since then, like they had broken up. And this reunion tribute concert is the first time they are seeing each other in years. And so this is a comedy movie, but their particular relationship to each other and how, like, no matter what events they have gone through in their life, no matter how much heartbreak and, like, torn up feelings there are between the two of them, they can always come together for the music, and the music will, like, bring the two of them back together. Like, okay, we may not be a couple, we may not be friends, but creatively we will always be partners.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I said, stylistically very different, but there are some certain vibes in that movie that if you liked Kids in the Slope, you might be able to get out of A Mighty Wind.
Sounds good. I didn't recognize it when you first mentioned it. I haven't seen it. I think I've heard about it once before.
I really love it, and the music is incredible. I think it's a mix of, like, traditional actual folk tunes and, like, songs they made up for this movie, and it's such high quality music in, like, composition and in performance. I really enjoy it.
Cool. Good. I would recommend, if you liked this, definitely check out Watanabe's other animes. Cowboy Bebop is probably what he's most known for, or at least most famous for initially. That one kind of has jazz and funk influences. Space Dandy has more disco. Samurai Champloo is more hip-hop. He has another one that is like nothing like this, not really music-related, though the music is kind of more ambient and techno-ish, kind of more electronic, called Terror in Resonance, which is kind of cool. I liked that one. But then he has another one that I also really, really liked that he helped out with. He didn't necessarily direct it, called Michiko and Hatchin. And I really love that show, but it's more like Latin and like Latin music and Jamaican, just like island, you know, type of stuff, and that's also good. If you're interested in like music anime and stuff like that, I would recommend K-On! K-On! Is another really good one. It's about these high school girls who join their high school's like music club. I guess the name K-On! Kind of is a shortened up version of some Japanese word that basically means light music, which is their version of pop. And it's just these like high school girls learning to play the instruments, and like, you know, they do their own high school's festival and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. And I had one more, and now I don't really remember it. Oh, if you're a little bit more into the like romance side of things, I might recommend Nana. There's a manga and an anime based off of it. I've heard that the manga is unfinished. So that's kind of unfortunate. But we did an episode on Nana. Paul and I did a long time ago. So if you look way back in our iTunes feed, I'm sure you can find that. We read the first couple volumes of the manga, but the anime is, you know, same type of thing. But it's about these two girls, both with the name Nana, who end up meeting as they go to college. They end up becoming roommates. one of them is this like super feminine girly girl thing, like just what like super stereotypical what you would think of like this she's into like girly stuff, and then the other one is like completely like punk rock emo, type of I just want to like smoke and play a show. So she does punk music and stuff like that, but they end up becoming like really good friends. And I don't know where the anime or the manga goes, but again, there was kind of this subtext of this kind of lesbian relationship happening there.
Yeah.
So if you're into that stuff, it's really good. I highly recommend it. So, yeah. That being said, let's move on to what we are going to be talking about for this next week. Melissa, you came up with the pitches for this week.
Yes, and I do have 3 pitches for you to choose from.
Sweet.
This is a movie. This is something I'm really feeling right now, but my last pick was a movie, so I don't know if I want to do another movie directly after that pick. And also, it is Shakespeare, and you guys did Prince of Cats not too long ago.
We
so
did.
You might want to save this for later. This is Joss Whedon's version of Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay.
I've seen this before. It's really a fun time, and it's been a movie I've really been wanting to revisit lately, and I think we could find some neat stuff to talk about that. Both the actual, like, direct Shakespeare, because this isn't like an adaptation. It is just the Shakespeare play exactly as it is. So we can talk about that, and then just the style he put over the whole thing. It's a really interesting adaptation of it.
For those who don't know the story of Much Ado About Nothing, what is that kind of about?
Oh, it is about this landowner, count, something like that, some minor noble that has 2 daughters. And he's friends with this soldier, and the soldier and all of his other soldiers, after they've just finished a big battle, they're traveling back home through the countryside. They stop at this man's estate, and it is about his feistiest daughter's relationship with also the feistiest of this group of soldiers.
Okay.
And then other like romantic entanglements that happen around them. And they really, like, they argue the whole time, and it's not until, like, the end if you're like, are you two actually going to get together or not? Because you're so argumentative with each other.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's one of the Shakespeare comedies.
Sounds good. Pitch number 2.
Yes, this is an anime on Netflix. Again, I don't know if we want to do an anime back-to-back. This is Agretsuko.
I just put this on my Netflix queue.
I've watched, I think, the first 3 episodes of it. There's maybe 12 episodes. They're like 15 minutes long. It's really cute. It's really creative. It's this world where everybody is an anthropomorphic animal. And we follow this little red panda who works in an office job. She's an accountant. She's so beaten down. She hates it. And it's just about her, like, trying to survive her work week. And also, the way she lets out steam is that she does this aggressive heavy metal karaoke.
Yes.
So when she's frustrated, she, like, goes into herself and just screams.
It's great. I've been seeing people talk about it on Twitter and just being like, "This show is amazing." Someone described it as, this show is literally just millennial rage.
Yeah, pretty much. And then pitch number 3,
okay.
Well, like pitch 2.5, because this is, I don't even know if this is something we could build an episode around.
Okay.
And if it isn't, then this is just a suggestion from me to you as a friend of a thing for you to check into in your own time. This is a YouTube series called Welcome to the Basement that is 2 friends watching and reviewing movies. And I've listened to plenty of your back catalog. I know kind of how you think about things. I thought this might be a helpful thing for you to learn how I think about movies, because I've watched, these guys have been doing it for years, and I've watched all of their episodes, and they are a good example of like the way I process stories and the way I like to talk about stories with other people. And they're like these 25-minute episodes. One guy invites his friend, it's always the same two guys, over to his basement. And the host, Matt, is every 2 weeks. They do it twice a month. I'm going to pick a movie I have never seen before. Craig, you may or may not have seen it before. And each episode is them watching this movie. They include clips from the movie. They include footage of them sitting on the couch. It's part, like, MST3K, like, riffs and jokes, and also part, like, really legitimate, smart film criticism, and just these two guys, like, being buddies and talking about things they like together. And it's also, like, really well edited and really well put together.
Interesting.
And I thought that might be an interesting thing for you to watch and sort of find out, like, learn a little bit more about, like, what my film criticism perspective is and what sort of things I respond to. But again, we've never, like, you've never done anything that's nonfiction like that. The closest you've done is, I believe, Understanding Comics.
Yeah.
So this might be too meta of a pick, but I wanted to throw it out there.
It's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
Let me see. If we did that one, how many episodes would you want to watch?
They've been doing this for like 6 years. And so there's, I don't know, like, there is over 100 episodes. They hit 100, I know, like, last summer or the summer before last. So, of course, we're not watching all of them.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to restrict us to, like, this is the first year. I think we would jump around. I've seen all of them already. But, like, I would offer you the option of jumping around, picking what movies look interesting to you, and maybe watching a total of, like, I don't know, 24 of them. Like, about the length of a TV series we might cover. Like, 24 of these, like, 20-minute episodes.
Interesting. Let's see. They're all good for different reasons. What do I want to do? So, let's see. Yeah, we did do something Shakespeare fairly recently, but I don't mind that. I don't mind going back to a movie either. I am a little bit worried that there won't be too much to talk about with the YouTube series or just a way to kind of analyze it. I definitely do want to check it out and see what there is. But I think I won't pick that one. So it's either the movie or the anime.
Yeah. I figured the YouTube series was like a weird wild card pick. I didn't know if you would want to spend a whole episode analyzing how something is analyzed and not analyzing a legitimate fictional narrative like you usually do.
It can definitely be done. I mean, like you mentioned, we did Understanding Comics, and it's just it's an episode on like how to understand comics, or just like what the definition of them are. Because we've looked at a whole bunch of similar things where it's like this isn't really some like a narrative story. That we've either pitched or talked about in the past, like off mic, and like we could do something kind of like this, and it's like we kind of could, but I don't know, it might be hard. So yeah, I think I'll pass on that one, but I will check it out, and we can definitely talk about that at a later date. Man, do I want to go? Because was I talking to you that you mentioned you really like Joss Whedon stuff? Was it someone else?
Like, I know I've liked everything I have seen from his catalog. I haven't seen all of it. I've seen Firefly, Serenity, I think the first season of Dollhouse, the musical episode of Buffy, and the first 2 Avengers movies.
Okay.
And Dr. Horrible. I can't forget about Dr. Horrible. I also really like that.
Okay. I think I'm gonna go with Much Ado About Nothing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's the one I was really feeling, but I'm like, do I want to pick a movie 2 times in a row? And also, like, you guys did Prince of Cats fairly recently.
You're totally good. I mean, there will be times when we do comic books back to back, or movies back to back. So it doesn't really matter as long as we try and mix it up as best we can. Sweet. Much Ado About Nothing by Joss Whedon. Sounds good. We will be talking about that next week. Yeah, I'm excited because I also don't know much about Shakespeare, so it's
I'm no
always
expert.
interesting for me to like find out about more Shakespeare stuff. Like we did our like Romeo and Juliet thing in school and stuff like that, but that was kind of about it. I think we read like a truncated version of Hamlet or something, or we watched one of the movies. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm excited to talk about that. You said you were really in the mood for that one as well, so that should be exciting.
Yeah, it's coming up on Shakespeare in the Park season here in St. Louis. They do that around like May, June. So I'm like, and they're not doing it this year. They're not doing Much Ado About Nothing this year. It's Romeo and Juliet. But I'm still like, I'm in a Shakespeare mood.
Okay.
Like, let's tackle this.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you guys for joining us if you were on the live stream with us. You guys should definitely come follow us on Twitch. Make it an account. It is free. We need some love on our Twitch page. We need more followers there. Once we reach 50 followers on Twitch, we get a little subscribe button, which people can then not only follow us, but can subscribe to us if you really like our show, which will then support us monetarily. You can subscribe for like $5 a month or something like that. Or if you have Amazon Prime, you get a free Twitch Prime subscription that you can give out once a month to whoever you want that has a subscribe button. So if we can get to 50 followers, we might be able to get some more help monetarily and stuff like that, which would be sweet. But if you cannot make the live streams, which we will be working out a set time for what those will be very soon. We've kind of been feeling out a couple different times and stuff like that, and just kind of get in the habit of recording these again. So now that we are back, we will get a set time. So be looking for that on Twitter. You can follow us at the Whatnauts. Once again, that being said, if you cannot make the live streams, this goes up on YouTube and as a podcast the following week, no matter what universe you are in. So go check it out. Go subscribe on iTunes or Apple or Google Podcasts or wherever. And go subscribe to our YouTube page. Our YouTube page could use a lot of love as well. We don't have very many subscribers over there. So we need your help. We need your help on all the social media stuff. You can follow me personally if you want to yell at me for something that I said. You can follow me at Hush315. And Melissa, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT, and then also to throw out a small plug.
Go for it.
You mentioned The Amazing Spider-Man 2 earlier. I was recently on my friend's podcast, Trifecta, that's Try with a Y, where it's 3 people reviewing 3 things that all fit in a category together, and I was on the episode comparing the 3 cinematic Spider-Man actors, so Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. And I did end up spending a lot of time talking about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So if you want my thoughts about that, you can go listen to episode 4 of Trifecta.
Tom Holland all the way.
Yeah, spoiler alert, he is the one we pick as number 1.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you guys again for joining us. Next week we're going to be talking about Much Ado About Nothing. We hope you guys go watch that and join us, because it'll be a lot of fun. You know what we also need to do? We need to, you know how Paul and I had the, I'm Kyla Springer and I'm Paul King. We are the Whatnauts. Goddamn right we are. We need to come up with something like that we can do.
Oh,
whether at the start or end of the show. that just like a nice outro where it's like, my name's Kyle Springer, and I'm Melissa, and yay team, you know,
yay team,
and something like that.
Yeah, I'll think about it.
We'll talk eventually about it and figure it out. But until then, thank you guys for listening in. We will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.